And we'll start off with the Trails Trust Paradise Valley to Robertson Road project. Ms. Acting City Manager.
Your Honor, members of council, Angela Emery with the Platte River Trails Trust is here, and she will explain what the proposal is and give us just kind of a nice overview, and then we'll be able to have an understanding on the funding and the timeline.
May I remove my mask while I speak, or do you want me to keep it on?
No, you're fine.
Okay, okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Friel and members of council. My name is Angela Emery. I'm the Executive Director of the Platte River Trails Trust. I'm joined this afternoon by David Huff, Board President, and Deborah Swedberg, Board Vice President. We are here this evening to request that the City of Casper be the sponsor of a YDOT TAP grant request for funding for a pedestrian bridge from Paradise Valley to Robertson Road. The grant request is for $500,000 with a required local match of $125,000 that will come from 1 cent number 16 funds allocated to the Trails Trust for this project. This project will create a long anticipated connection from the East Casper Soccer Complex to Robertson Road along the non-motorized Platte River Trail. This connection was identified and called out in the Trails Trust Master Plan from 1982 and appears in other city planning documents. The preliminary cost estimate for the bridge is $1.25 million. We anticipate construction of the project at the earliest in fall of 2021. We anticipate that the total city contribution to the project will be approximately $368,000. This funding will come from future 1 cent number 16 allocations set aside for the Trails Trust and previously approved by council. In total, the city's contribution will be less than 30% of the total project cost. In essence, the Trails Trust will leverage the city's contribution of $368,000 with $882,000, $500,000 from the TAP grant, and an additional $382,000 from a variety of sources, including public and private foundations, both local and national events, and other fundraising efforts. The Trails Trust has a proven track record of leveraging city funding in this manner. For example, the trust secured a grant of $100,000 from a private foundation for the pedestrian bridge at the pump house, $150,000 for the Fort Casper underpass, $105,000 for the Casper Mountain Road Phase 1 project, and most recently $100,000 for the Poplar Street Bridge enhancements. Our current COVID-19 situation has revealed more than ever how important trails and green spaces are to our citizens. City trail counters showed a 360% increase in trail usage in March 2020 over March of 2019. We are here tonight respectfully to request that City Council approve the sponsorship of the YDOT TAP grant with a local match of $125,000 from the 1 cent number 16 funds allocated to the Platte River Trails Trust. This project, we believe, will be an investment in our community's non-motorized infrastructure and bring much-needed dollars to Casper that will support local contractors and vendors. And finally, if the City of Casper does not seek this funding, another Wyoming community will. Mayor Friel, members of council, I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Cathy.
Yes. I know that we approved your fundraising for, I believe it was $90,000 to put bump outs on the bridge over the river on Poplar Street. How is that fundraising going?
Thank you for the question, Councilman Cathy. Mayor Friel, members of council, we are still committed to the full $100,000. We anticipate the cost for each bump out being approximately $50,000. The way we are raising that money is through our year-end giving letter and through events such as Riverfest. And so we will be ready to provide that funding to the city when construction begins, which I think will not probably be until 2021.
Thank you. I was just curious how that was going because you're talking again about raising more funds, so
That's correct. That's what we're committed to doing.
thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Bates.
So with this match, is this just talking about just the bridge alone, or are we talking about from the bridge connecting down, the idea was Indian Paintbrush to River Bend and connecting it to the trails? When you mentioned off-road trails or not street trails, so I'm just double checking, is this just the bridge alone, or is this the whole path to connection?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Bates, Mayor Friel, members of council. This project will be what we are describing as Phase 1, which will include the bridge and the trail connections on the west side to the Robertson Road Bridge. So it'll be a 10-foot wide short trail, 75 feet-ish or so. And on the east side, there will be also a 10-foot wide concrete trail that will lead back to Indian Paintbrush. This project does not include any bike lanes. We believe that Phase 1 will allow us to judge the amount of use. We already know from the city engineering department that the traffic count is quite low on Indian Paintbrush and the other Riverbend Road. So we feel like it will be safe for cyclists and walkers to be on the sidewalk or in the street if and until we decide that bike lanes are appropriate or some kind of shared bike car situation.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Emery, on the map that we're got up and looking at it, we're not looking at it here, but that is going to obviously put a lot more trails availability to everything on the west side of the river at that spot. Do you have any idea how many people that really would serve?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question, Councilman Hopkins, Mayor Friel, members of council. I don't have that number at my fingertips, but just imagine all of those new neighborhoods along Robertson Road from CY and north will now be connected. So a family, a school child can travel from Oregon Trail School potentially all the way to the library without ever interfacing with a road. I know the city has as a goal to incorporate or to serve more of West Casper, and we certainly believe this project will do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. See, do you have somebody else to speak, or are we good?
If you want to hear from someone else, I'm sure David would like to speak. Angela covered what we wanted to say.
Okay, sounds good. So you just need thumbs up on this end, or thumbs down? Okay, so if we can get a thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, looks all but one are in favor of it. Okay, we'll move on to Commission on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies, or CALEA.
Chief McFeeters, sir, will address this.
Okay, Chief?
Mayor, Council, thanks for this opportunity to offer some clarification on this program. Almost 3 years ago, when I was applying for this job and interviewing in that process, I had done some research and indicated even then that it was my intention to consider CALEA for the needs of the city of Casper and our police department here. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies is the premier accrediting agency for law enforcement agencies. They have been in this game for a long time. I have personal hands-on experience being personally accountable for it for, I believe, about 18 years, and and another 7 years prior to that, I'm working with CALIA, even to the point where I was assisting other agencies in their accreditation processes. The accreditation process is of value to us because it creates an environment where we are constantly reviewing and updating our policies and the procedures and the directions that we're giving our officers, making sure that they are consistent with current case law, with best practices, that we are taking care of not only the physical needs of the officers, but the administrative needs, the needs of their health and wellness, and all of the employees of the police department. So having personal experience with this, having worked for agencies that were not accredited, having worked with agencies that were accredited, there is a monumental difference. It has meaning to us when we are dealing with lawsuits, having that seal of approval from a third-party respected organization that our policies are correct, that they're current, that they're modern, and that they reflect best practices has a relevant meaning to lawsuits and other civil litigation arising out of our law enforcement responsibilities. So for the last 2.5 years, I have, in meetings with the city manager, I've repeatedly stressed that it is my intention to seek accreditation through CALIA. It's been taking us a couple years to get ready to the point where I felt comfortable that we were doing that. Primarily, when I arrived here, our evidence holdings were not in a condition for us to seek accreditation. It would have been an obvious glaring roadblock for us, and so we've spent the last 2 years ameliorating that serious concern that we had in the way that we were storing the sheer volume of evidence that we had. And we've gotten to the point where we can now decide to pursue accreditation. From the city manager's point of view, and he's not here today, but I wish to express what his concern was in bringing this to the attention of the council tonight, is that if this is going to be done right, if we are going to dedicate the resources and commit ourselves to pursuing and maintaining accreditation, there is a need for that will, as time progresses and as we get deeper into the process, it does mean an FTE. It will require a full-time employee, one that would be dedicated primarily to that, but then we could reassign other duties as needed, depending upon the cycle of accreditation. And the city manager did not want to proceed with this without your knowledge and your support, that eventually down the road that I would be coming forward and explaining the need to have a full-time employee that is dedicated to assuring that our policies, our processes, and our procedures are constantly being maintained up to date, they're as professional as can be, and do represent the industry's best practices on an ongoing basis. Many of the policies that we have in place right now have been there since 2014. Much has changed in the law enforcement world since 2014, but in just the day-to-day course of business, when you're working in an industry where something new happens today, and that we got to devote our resources to, oftentimes that maintenance of our policies and the review that is needed kind of takes a back seat to the emergency that we're responding to today. The CALIA process, in a nutshell, is a process that creates an environment where it engages the entire department, top to bottom, not just the chief, not just the command staff, but everybody in the department in this process of saying, hey, I have a stake in making sure that our processes are complete, they're up to date, and they're modern. So with that in mind, I would entertain any questions. When it comes to the funding of this was something we budgeted for out of FY20. We've locked that money away out of our FY20 monies. We're just looking for a thumbs up from council to proceed, knowing that in the future it may very well come to the point where I would request an FTE.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It sounds to me like this would be a really good tool for recruiting. And one of the things that, just out of curiosity, I guess, more than anything else, how many cities in the state of Wyoming have this accreditation at this point?
So yes, it is, if we achieve accreditation and especially achieve the upper levels of accreditation. It's changed its name over the years. It used to be called Flagship, and then there was the Gold Standard. Once you achieve that, it absolutely, it sets you apart. There's, less than 5% of all law enforcement agencies are accredited through CALIA, and on a given year, about 30 achieve that upper status. And so it is effective for recruiting. And I'm sorry, your second comment was?
Question was, how many other cities are probably involved in doing this?
So currently there is nobody in the state of Wyoming. However, the city of Cheyenne and myself have been in communications, kind of as a joint effort where we're committed to introducing this into our area, and I believe that they are proceeding at about the same pace I am. Mayor, I forgot to mention one thing that is absolutely critical too. By executive order last month, the President of the United States introduced an executive order that puts ties to federal grants, and those ties become progressively more stringent. But in essence, what those ties are is that federal monies will only be granted to law enforcement agencies that can prove through a third-party accredited organization that they meet the standards that are required. In your packet today, you should have the highlighted section of that executive order. This does have meaning for us moving forward into the future as we seek federal grant opportunities. We're going to have to prove that we have a third-party, accredited third party that recognizes our policies are up to date and in compliance with their expectations. In my mind, this will, in the end, my personal experience is that the savings that we've had in my career, it's by producing the CALIA accreditation at the highest level, it saved us in our stop-loss premium insurance coverage. We saved in lawsuits, we saved in a lot of areas, and it actually ended up saving us money. This has a direct reflection on our ability to secure and obtain federal grants moving forward into the future, and much of the grants that we rely upon for traffic safety originate through the federal government. And so that's one of the impetus of that we should consider this now moving forward. The time is right. The department has prepared itself for this, and now there's some outside reasons accompanying it that make good sense for us to proceed.
Councilman Cassidy.
When are you anticipating the addition of the other employee? Within the next 6 months, 18 months? Do you have a feeling for that?
Yes, Mayor, Councilman, that's an excellent question. We're in a position as we're in the beginning stages of this. The commission is acutely aware of how difficult it is to achieve this. So it's kind of got a phased approach, and we're going to be able to manage for at least a year without that. So I would not be approaching council for considerations of this during this fiscal year at all. We're in a good position. We've worked hard to get to this place where we can now begin the formal process. It would take some time. CALIA over the years has kind of morphed a little bit. They have a lower standard of accreditation. It's helpful. That's within our sights. When we set our sights on the higher standard of accreditation, that's when that will be the triggering point to when we need somebody to be dedicated to that effort.
As a follow-up?
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. The other question is, will this particular individual need to go to the academy to see, and I don't remember the exact term that you used for the certified officers versus the non, but would that person need to go to the academy to be able to see how our officers are trained and then compare that with CALIA to see where or if there are differences, or would this just be more of a straight administrative person?
Mayor, Councilman, these are excellent questions. The functional reality of this is it does not have to be a sworn police officer. It doesn't have to be a member of the command staff. In fact, I prefer a civilian that doesn't have to worry about, advanced training in other areas, that they can concentrate on this. So, you know, it's not, the market value of an accreditation manager has a high value in law enforcement. When the President of the United States created that executive order, that value just went up. And so, you know, I guess what I'm trying to convey to you, it's, you know, it would be similar to a command staff level person. When it comes to the pay and benefits, it would be very similar to that because of the specialized nature of it. But, you know, that's down the road. We think that we can pull off the first level by ourselves.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Councilman Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, first I want to compliment you for working on this. I think this is a good idea. And having said that, my question is probably going to sound a little bit odd, but I really want to make sure that something's real clear on the record. I know in the lawyer world, there are all kinds of rating services and things like that, like best lawyers in America, best lawyers in the world, that if you send in your money, they list you in that. Could you just explain to everybody how, if this outfit that you're looking to get accredited by, are they a legitimate outfit, and kind of explain that so that it's real clear on the record that we're not just signing up for something that if we send them money, they send us a certificate?
Mayor and Councilman, that's an excellent point, and I apologize for taking so much time today. And be a little bit more, I'm going to have to answer that in a lengthy way. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies is the gold standard in my industry. And so for you to achieve their status of accreditation means that handpicked, chosen professionals from all across of our country have to come here to Casper. They have to wade through our policies and our procedures. They eyeball them and they check them off the list one by one, that we meet this standard, we meet that standard, we meet all of these things. And then furthermore, not only do they make sure that our policies are in place, then they meet one-on-one with random employees throughout the department, and they ask them the hard questions of what would you do in this circumstance? And that employee's got to not only know the policy, but they also have to show that that is our practice also. And so this is industry professionals, handpicked from the best of the best from across the nation, actually come and review our stuff, hands-on. They reject it, they sign off on it, they make recommendations, and then they verify that not only we have the policies in place, but we're following our policies. And so this is not similar to a business organization that you pay them an annual fee and you get a high rating from them. That is not the case here. They zealously guard their seal of approval through hands-on proofs. And the word proof is going to show up thousands of times in the CALIA process. You have to actually prove what you're doing.
Councilman Bates.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I got two questions for you. I'm going to go with the first one. Is there other third-party agencies out there that could do this, do the same thing that is equal or possibly better? And if so, why CLIA?
Okay, Mayor, Councilman, good question. So the answer to that question is yes, there are others. In many states, as a direct result of CALIA's presence and the work that they were doing, many states have adopted an accreditation program that is promulgated by the state for law enforcement agencies within that state. The state of Wyoming does not have that. And so where other states do have an accreditation function in it, the state of Wyoming, that is not available to us. The second part of that, there is nobody else that does it better. There is no other third party that is trying to hone in on this, because CALIA has been doing it for 3 decades now, and they've got it down pat, and they have international respect.
Okay, and then my follow-up, if you don't mind.
Good.
With this costing, my understanding, $11,450 to participate into this, and you were talking about that they're going to come in and check your policy and procedures and talk to the officers and so forth. Could this potentially if they find things different or wrong, or not wrong, but could be better, something could be used better, could this end up costing the city more money by them coming in?
Mayor, Councilman, that's a good question. You know, so long story short is the fee that we're paying is for our membership, and it also kind of starts an advance on these review processes. So when, you know, so initially we've switched a lot to online review of policies, but eventually people got to come here and travel, and we're actually putting money down in advance for the travel expenses for those people, that so that when that does happen, I'm not getting bills for their travel expenses and their hotel and airfare and things like that. So the potential for them to identify things that we could do better is exactly why we're doing this, is to get that outside opinions, a fresh set of eyes that says, hey, there's a better way out there. And so those tend to usually be more efficient for us. There is a potential for, you know, infrastructure and things like that to be identified, as maybe there is a need here. And so there is the potential for us to consider moving forward whether or not we want to take those recommendations as those professionals identify them. I would be lying if I said that, oh, there's no chance that they would not identify something that we might need to address. But you know, that possibility does exist, but you know, we take those one step at a time. CALEA does not tell us how to do things. They tell us these are the best way to do it, and they make the recommendations for us to kind of identify what works for Casper to achieve these set standards and these goals.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This sounds an awful lot like the process that the hospital goes through with Leapfrog. And I know they have literally thousands of man hours in getting that rating. And it's the gold standard in hospitals. But the thing I'm curious about now is how long is our length of accreditation period?
So you know, the CALEA has kind of changed over the years. It started out at 5 years, and then it went to 4 years, and now it's at a 3-year period. But they've reduced the expenses involved with it. There's a lot of online portions of it because they realized that people didn't have to travel here to actually see our written policies, that we can take care of a lot of that over there. So now there's more of a, instead of waiting for 4 or 5 or 3 years to review all this stuff yet again, we're doing it on an annual basis. So it's actually a better process now. It's more efficient, and it's better for us because instead of finding out 3 years later, hey, we have a problem, now we're working on it right from the start, and we're checking up on it annually. So I think I've answered your question, but
As it stands now, then it's a 3-year
Yes.
accreditation period? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have actually 2 questions. And the first one you might not be able to answer, but does anybody you or anybody in your staff, I think it was under Chief Pagel, we were CALEA accredited. Do we know why we dropped the accreditation or no longer followed up with it?
Mayor, with your permission, I'm going to give you an opinion. It is my opinion. It is not going to be based upon any documents that I've had a chance to review. I have experience with helping and assisting multiple agencies across the United States in achieving accreditation. It's been my experience in those processes that periodically you have a new chief that comes in and says, we're gonna achieve this goal. But if you don't go about it right, if you don't get participation from all levels of the organization, it feels like a program promulgated by a chief, by an administrator. And when that administrator leaves, the next one comes in and realizes that there was a lot of animosity because people didn't understand, why are we doing this? It was just things being foisted on them from the administrators. It tends to, if you don't do it right, it can breed animosity, and the next guy coming in says, I don't want to deal with that, or I don't believe in accreditation. So you know, I've watched that happen over the years, and I think in this particular circumstance, it is my opinion, without disparaging any of my predecessors, is that it was a program of one individual rather than a department dedication to a philosophy of trying to be the best that we possibly could. And without that dedication to it, the chances of it flopping when the next administrator comes in is pretty high. And that's what I think happened here.
Okay. And then the second part of that question, I think that you answered when you answered Councilman Hopkins, but so being that we were accredited at one point in time, we're starting the entire process over again, so it's the full cost. There's not an update program to where we can pick up where we left off, or is there?
It's a completely different program. So
Okay.
that would have been version 3. We are far past that now, and quite frankly, the things that we needed to keep in place have not been kept in place. There's a reason why, Mayor, that I have delayed this initial foray into this for more than 2 years. It's because we had work to do to get to the point where I felt comfortable that we could begin the process without facing onerous tasks that would have been so burdensome that it would have just discouraged us.
Councilman Bates.
I might be giving you a loaded question, I don't mean to, so bear with me for a minute. You mentioned the other predecessor may have thought this was a great idea, threw it out there, obviously it didn't work, and so it fell to the wayside. How does your department, you mentioned the department, how does your department feel regarding this? And I'm assuming that they feel fine because you're bringing it to us, but I'd just like clarification of how most of your department, the police officers that are going to have to know this inside out, follow it to a T, which I'm sure they already do, but just how do they feel of bringing this on?
Mayor, Councilman, that's a great question. The individual officers that are at the department, there's only just a few of them left that have got any collective memory of what it meant to be a CALIA organization. So most of them don't know what to expect. What they would tell you is, look, when we're doing things on the street, we need to know what the rules are. We need to know what are the things that we shouldn't do that would get us in trouble. We need to know the things that we should do that will be praised as good work. And so if you have employees that don't know what the rules are, that don't know what will get them in trouble, and don't know what will get them promoted or praised, that's a difficult premise to work under. And so when people don't have that guidance that they need, in an industry where we're making decisions on the fly, we're faced with chaotic events and we have to make decisions, the absence of familiarity with those policies and the absence of having those policies actually reflect today's current community standards, community goals and objectives, the current legal standards, that's what causes the officer stress. So the way that that I have personal experience with, that you overcome the hesitancy of, if it's just the chief's program, then every day here's a new policy to sign that I've read and understood. That's completely different from what I try to implement, which is identifying the patrolman in our department who has the most experience in this particular topic, and we engage them of, hey, review our current policy, make recommendations to us that we can incorporate in here to make sure that we are relevant with today's needs. And so we engage all levels of the department through the entire chain of command, and including our civilian staff. These policies also govern them. And it gives the employees a chance to have a hand in our policy making so that they are not forced to deal with a policy that's unreasonable when implementing it out on the streets. So our practices out on the street need to match what our policies are. If we do this right, they have a say in crafting these policies so that it matches the needs of the street.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So we need a thumbs up or a vote thumbs up or thumbs down to move forward on this? Okay, looks good, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to State Board of Equalization. So I'll just take this one and kind of recap. Our last work session, we had the county assessor in here trying to make sense of some of these assessments that have been taking place. Obviously, we're more worried about the city itself, not that we're not worried about the county, but the city. I don't really feel that a lot of our questions were answered. And I think we still sit here today wondering how the formula works, and we had some really good examples of, you know, how property could be at 70,000 and then 2 lots down, as you brought up, is $400,000, and it just doesn't make sense, and it doesn't seem like anything was answered that night. So I had requested that we send a letter to the State Board of Equalization. And we put together several examples from across the city to show how off the evaluations were. And basically the letter is asking them to review, not only review the samples that we sent, but try and answer the questions for us that we can't seem to get answered. So, this whole thing tonight is asking if council will stand behind the letter will be sent on behalf of the entire city council to have them look into it and maybe give us some answers. So, Councilman Huber.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's a great idea to send that. But I do have a question, and I don't know if you had heard anything more about this. My impression was that Mr. Keating was talking about that, like the very next day after he was here talking to us, that there was going to be some kind of a meeting with the state board. Do we know, and that they were going to either approve or disapprove of what he was doing, or something? Do you know anything at all about that?
I don't know how it came out, but the way I understood it that night is they were meeting the next day to look at the way that he was conducting business, you know, his formula. And he seemed rather confident that the state was going to take that and run with that. But I don't know what the outcome of that was.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Yep. So the whole idea behind this is to have them look at samples that we're sending to them that we feel are off and explain to us. If we're wrong, great. Tell me we're wrong. But if we're correct, then we're asking for some assistance to get this back in line. So with that, Councilman Cathy.
Yes, I had a question for Councilwoman Lutz. The other night when he was here 2 weeks ago, he said he was going to send us his information so we could review it and try to figure it out. I have received nothing. Have you received anything? Mr. Mayor, have you received anything? No. You know if the city manager? So basically, he's had 2 weeks and we have seen nothing. I think it is time to send the letter.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good letter, by the way.
Okay, thank you. So I guess give me a vote, thumbs up. Okay, so we'll move forward on getting that letter down to the state. Councilman Bates.
I'm not sure if the rest of you knew that tomorrow at 1 o'clock, he is having a meeting at the agricultural building that you had to sign up for, receive a confirmation ticket to go to it, that he's going to, all the people that's emailed them, there's only 16, I think, were allowed, or maybe a little bit more, but anyways, that he's going to be there explaining the reason for everything once again. I'm not sure if the rest of you guys knew about that or not.
I think he mentioned it when he was here.
Okay. So, but I've asked to go, so I plan on going and seeing if there's any other additional information, just FYI.
And I think in the amount of times, even, you know, what he's put out publicly on TV or in different interviews, that we still have the same questions. And so that's the purpose behind moving forward to the state. So, so we'll do that. We'll move forward with that letter and those examples. Okay. Councilman Cathy.
Yes, would it be possible, since you're going to go to that meeting, Councilman Bates, that once you have gone to it, could you send an email to all of council summarizing what you learned or didn't learn from that meeting, as the case may be? Would appreciate that.
Or if we could actually have you send that to the city manager, then he can disseminate it to each of us.
That might be better, or send it like in twos or something.
Yep,
Okay,
just the public.
not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
no, I just wanted the information to get out as soon as we could, rather than waiting a week or two
Sure.
to see what was going on. So,
Yep, if you
whatever
could,
the appropriate method is.
if you could, when is that meeting?
Tomorrow at 1.
Okay, so if you could maybe forward that to Ms. Becker, and then she'll get it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move forward to the golf course clubhouse.
Your Honor, we're going to have Mr. Cortez come and give an update on the newest, or the most recent plan to move forward with some additional improvements there.
All right, Mr. Cortez.
Mayor, council, first off, I got to tell you, there's a major transformation that's taken place at the existing clubhouse. For those of you that haven't got a chance to get up there and try some of the food and kind of take in, you know, that metamorphosis, you know, I think that Mr. Johnson, I spoke with him today. I think if he were here, he'd tell you how much he appreciates your vision and support. You know, if you recall, we spent about $125,000 to kind of make that occur, and the funding source of that was the Golf Course Reserve Fund. And since then, what has kind of come across to Mr. Johnson and his staff is there's kind of a critical component kind of missing that was out of that project, and we really hadn't acknowledged it or saw what it could be until we kind of started working in there and getting a feel for what was going on and what people really wanted. And really, probably the biggest benefit that separates the municipal golf course clubhouse from any other restaurant you'll see in town is that magnificent view, you know. And so you'll notice, like the Three Crowns, for instance, they got a lot of windows and stuff that kind of accentuate the course. You go to the country club, they got a pretty nice deck that kind of does the exact same thing. The problem at the Muni is that it's pretty closed in. The windows are outdated. The paneling that encases those are outdated as well. We figured that the panels, it was originally an uncovered deck, and then we think in the late 80s, they decided to kind of wall it in and kind of make more area for maybe more year-round use, which we really don't anticipate that we would need at this point, and we haven't needed since I've taken this position with the city. And so what I have before you today is a recommendation for us to take out that north wall. We would leave in the west wall, for instance. It's kind of a wind block. Take out the north wall, which kind of opens out to the course. And then we'd also leave in basically the east wall, just because we do have some infrastructure that kind of resides behind there that doesn't need to be seen. As a result of that, what I'm coming to you for is a request for $16,000 to do that work. And what that kind of encompasses is us taking out the window in that wall, and then also putting in a rail that meets code specifications which it currently would not. And then a little bit of contingency for trim and items such as that. So that total project, we've kind of had quotes out and we've gotten some bids back. It seems like that's a pretty safe number. Once again, the funding source would be the Golf Course Reserve Fund. One of the other projects that we have that's kind of waiting in the wings, that we were waiting for the new fiscal year to take place, is we have a sprinkler system project that needs to take place per code. And so we're going to do that in the fall after the season kind of ends and we kind of get that buttoned up. We'll time that with Mr. Johnson and his folks, get that done. But the preliminary pricing on that looks pretty favorable, meaning we're getting, you know, kind of bids just kind of around that $30,000, $40,000 range, and council allocated $100,000 for that particular project. It's not all the way seen through, so I can see some add-ons coming for sure, including, you know, engineering and stuff like that, possibly a fire line, another water line that would need to come into the building, but we still anticipate savings in that project. And so the idea would be take the $16,000 out of the golf course reserve. If we were to see any savings in that project, meaning come short of the $100,000, we would just transfuse it back into the golf course reserve fund and make it whole again. With that, I would entertain any questions.
Councilman Catherine.
Are they planning on doing anything with the door between the main dining room and the deck? And the
Mr.
the reason I'm asking that is, last Friday, when I was there for lunch, we sat out on the deck, and to carry one of those trays with like dinner for four, you have to have two people, because you can't get the tray widthwise through. You have to actually turn it lengthwise to get a tray through the door. And so trying to carry the tray and get through the door, you need two people. So it is a bit of a problem for some of the help getting in and out from the deck to the main part of the dining room.
Mr. Mayor.
I don't know whether anybody thought about that, but just thought I'd throw that out.
That's a excellent point. First off, thanks for, going to check it out. Appreciate that. We really, I haven't heard that from Mr. Johnson or his group. I can see how that is in fact the case. We looked at that. The sliding doors they're old, they're probably original to the building. So we had thought about replacing them at some point. The problem was they're encased in the cinder blocks that surround it. And it was going to be kind of more of an undertaking than what we had thought. So the answer to your question, though, is no, we don't have any plans to do anything with those doors at this particular time.
No, I know the young lady that was waiting on us said the first time she went out, she almost lost a whole tray because she hadn't realized it wouldn't go through there. So, just.
Fair enough.
Any other questions? Okay, Councilman Cathy.
And again, going out there as Joe Blow citizen, rather than going out on a council tour, you get a little more perspective of how people think and feel about a lot of things. So, yeah, I'm sure if I would have been there as a councilman, she may not have said anything about it, and just joking with her and, so, yeah.
Appreciate the feedback.
Okay, so thumbs up or thumbs down whether you're in favor of removing that wall out there? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda review. Anything on the agenda tonight anybody has any questions on, or anything that we need to discuss on that, Ms. Acting City Manager?
Looking at the work session, Your Honor, moving forward, topics there for next Tuesday evening. The Cowboy Skills demo will be for your information, and then the rest of these are pretty much direction requested on the utility business plan, the wayfinding plan, which I'll be presenting, the marketing the parking management RFP update, which will be a direction requested after an update. The animal ordinance, again, will be more of an update and direction requested. And the ARA JPB bylaws will be also an update. Maybe.
Okay. Is there any other items that anybody needs to discuss or add on to future agenda items? Councilman Cathy?
Well, a couple of things that I would like to see before fall comes along is, number one, I think we probably need to discuss our snow plowing plans. I realize this is July and it's 95 degrees, but, picking up all of the snow and the way we have been doing it is a significant cost to the city. And I would like to hear what some other proposals, particularly from streets, and I know some of us have lived other places that don't pick up all of their snow, just basically in downtown and things, and I think we should discuss that. One other thing I think might be good is, I know we have had some issues with a lot of liquidated damages and potential issues with contractors, and I know the first time I was on council, we actually talked about putting in an evaluation system for contractors, similar to what the state does. And if you start falling down because of constant liquidated damages, constant problems with associated landowners, things like this, that maybe we ought to be reviewing and having a little talk with them, because those are issues and problems that we don't need to continue having all of the time. And I would like to see if we could have that on a work session item as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then we'll reconvene here in about 7 minutes and get started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the June 16th, 2020 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on June 26, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Lutz. Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Aye. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the June 16th, 2020 executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Bates. Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the July 7th, 2020 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Bates,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Lutz. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Direct all questions, comments to the mayor and and only the mayor. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members. Presentations are limited to 5 minutes and duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor will time extensions be permitted. Is there anybody that would like to come speak to council? Okay, we'll move on. Animal control ordinance. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, to establish July 21st, 2020 as a public hearing date for the consideration of the ordinance amending sections of chapter 6.04 animal control or care and control.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Councilman Cathy, second by Councilman Hopkins. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the vacation of a portion of West 8th Street. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have two exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Beckett or J. Carter Napier, dated June 5, 2020. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated June 11, 2020.
The City Manager's report.
Mayor, members of council, tonight is the first reading on a proposed ordinance to vacate West 8th Street between South David Street and South Center Street. We're going to get a map put up here for a minute. The portion of the street, this is being proposed by the school district for the vacation, and it is right adjacent to Park School. The purpose of the vacation is to be used for additional parking and to close it off for the through traffic to improve pedestrian and student safety. The school district has provided the necessary signatures from the majority of the property owners in the area, as well as from the easement releases from our affected utility providers. And again, this is the first of the 3 readings. And we put together a location map a little bit different than what was in your packet that would identify Park School, obviously the school district bus hub, the location of City Park, but more importantly, David Street, Center Street, and 9th Street. And you'll hear in a minute from the project engineer, but we're looking again at the proposed pullouts for drop-off and have some opportunities now to incorporate that around Park School for additional student safety. So that concludes my city manager's report.
Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the vacation of West 8th Street, please approach the lectern.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Sean Gustafson, BCS Engineers, 111 West 2nd Street, Suite 600. We prepared the abandonment papers, and yeah, I think Ms. Becker talked about it pretty well in the report. You know, it's mainly to enhance student safety. Some of the caveats of 8th Street right in there are the fact that it lays in between the bus hub and a school that is always operating at capacity, which is actually currently going through some fairly major renovations and some enhancements and so on. So the other thing, and Ms. Becker talked about that also, is that we are looking at additional parent drop-off to get the parents off of the street, both on 9th Street and Center Street at this point in time. It's in the school district's hands. We've given them some concepts, and they're thinking about that. 8th Street, the only utility that was in 8th Street was the sanitary sewer line, which the school district has agreed to take over from where it came out, where the old alleyway would be, which runs pretty much underneath the entryway between the gym and the school there, and goes all the way down and over to a line that cuts through City Park. And that would become a service line. Actually, it's been considered that since about 1954, when that addition was built over the top of there, and sometime at an unknown future or unknown past, the flows from south down the alleyway, all the sewers are in the alley here. The flows from the south were diverted in 9th Street to the west, to the alley between Ash and David. So all other utilities are fed from either David or Center Street, and we did gain all of the necessary signatures from the utility operators also. So without saying too much more to completely bore you, I'd love to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Cathy.
Are they planning on using this West 8th Street similar to what they're doing with the street between, Dean Morgan and which, Spruce Street? Thank you. Are they planning on doing the same thing here as they do on Spruce Street between 14th and 15th? With the gates and the parking and open part of the time and closed part of the time, or?
Yes, and in fact, it'll be very similar. The gates are the same gates that are used there that we'll be putting up on 8th Street. And there will be some teacher parking in that area, but only teacher parking, and it will be closed the majority of the time. So, open for events and things like that. But all of the parent parking is set to take place on David Street. There will be 2 rows of diagonal parking along David Street that should handle all of the parent parking. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of? All right, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the vacation of West 8th Street, please approach the lectern. Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the vacation of West 8th Street, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance approving the vacation of West 8th Street from South David Street to South Center Street.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins.
Second.
Second by Councilman Pacheco. Discussion? Okay, any amendments? Any abstention or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the rates for solid waste disposal. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Your Honor, Council, we have one exhibit. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Andrew Beamer to J. Carter Napier, dated June 22, 2020.
City Manager's report.
Mayor, members of council, the next public hearing is for a resolution, which will be a recommendation by staff to adopt revisions to the current residential and commercial solid waste collection, recycling, and disposal fees at the Casper Solid Waste Facility. As you are aware, this spring there were a lot of surveys that were done to look at the desire for the recycling depots to be reopened and the importance of recycling to the city of Casper. Staff at that time was directed to provide a rate resolution to increase the residential refuse collection rate by $1.70 per month. This will be presented this evening. City Council also directed staff to pursue negotiating an agreement with the towns of Bar None, Evansville, and Mills, which again would help to charge some additional costs for the services that our landfill provides for them, and thus look at some benefits to our fees. We're looking at an effective date of September 1st to provide time to negotiate potentially these service agreements with the surrounding towns and to hire the staff. In a separate partnership with the with the residential rate, staff is also recommending a commercial recycle rate of $35 per ton. This is not currently in place, and so this is a new opportunity for the city of Casper that you'll hear about in a minute. And that would allow our landfill to charge haulers outside of the city who bring recyclable materials to the MRF, such as Glen Rock, Douglas, and Rollins, to pay that recyclable rate. So that point concludes my city manager's report.
Okay, council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the rates for solid waste disposal, please approach the lectern.
Mr. Beamer and Ms. Langston are here if you would have questions.
Okay. All right, with no one speaking in favor of it at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the rates for solid waste disposal, please approach the lectern. All right, there being no one to speak for or against the rates for solid waste disposal, I now declare the public hearing closed. Chair would entertain a motion to, by resolution, authorize the rates for solid waste disposal and rescind resolution number 19-250.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Lutz,
Second?
second by Councilman Bates. Discussion. Councilman Cathy.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Langston.
Your Honor.
What was your initial recommendation as far as the options were concerned based on city staff recommendations?
My original memo that I had all 6 options in was option number 5, which was not to leave the depots open and just have the MRF open. That was my original recommendation before the survey.
And I believe that came with a rate increase of 30 cents, wasn't it?
It was.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilman Bates.
I'm not seeing here, and I know you said negotiation with, like Evansville, bar none, mills of collecting their recyclable material. Is that also the $35 rate or, their trash rate? What rate would that be for them?
Your Honor, Councilman Bates, that $35 per ton, I'm not sure I ever discussed it with you guys except in this format here with a rate resolution. That is just exclusively for people that live outside of Natrona County. So if Douglas decides they want to bring their cardboard to us, they'll have to pay us $35 a ton to process that.
Okay, wasn't it Evansville Mills and them were getting their trash hauled for nothing basically? And if that's accurate, have you figured out a rate for that yet?
Your Honor, Councilman Bates, we have, and we were doing it free of charge, collecting the recyclables from the recycling depot. And I did some calculations based on some assumptions, based on population and volumes that we get, what I believed was their fair share of our costs. And as I recall, I think it's on the mayor's desk, or we've sent it out already with that information to all 3 towns, telling them what it currently costs us and some options to remove some of their commodities if they can't afford it, because it may be more than a 10% rate to them because they have smaller communities. So we give them lots of options for what they would like to do in the future. So they're going to have to do the same thing that you all did. Just probably ask their constituents, do you want your depots, or do you want us to raise your rates and continue to service them? So that's what we hope to negotiate here in the next few months with those 3 communities.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any further discussion at all? All right, any amendments? Councilman Cathy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to amend this ordinance to go back to option 4, close the depots and go to the 30-cent rate for the city residents. The reason I am proposing that amendment is, as I've stated before, you put out a public survey and only those that are very adamant about something are the only ones that will respond. The ones that are ho-hum don't do anything. And so if they are that adamant about trying to recycle, then let them take it to the MRF or hire one of the local companies to do that, rather than imposing $1.70 on every household in the city limits of Casper for 1,700 people.
Okay, so I have an amendment on the table by Councilman Cathy to move it back to option number 4. Do I have a second for that?
Good try.
Okay, don't have a second, so brings us back to any other amendments. Okay, any abstention or nay votes?
Nay.
All right, and all voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Councilman Cathy voting nay, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9A1, a contract with Granite Peak for purchase of golf course pump station. Item 9A2, the purchase and installation of a plasma table from Airgas. Item 9A3, a contract with Jacobs Engineering for the North Platte Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project. Item 9A4, amending the grant from the Wyoming Water Development Commission for the CY booster station replacement. Item 9A5, a license agreement with Advanced Communications for installation of buried fiber optic cable. Item 9A6, a change order with Haas Construction for the Ice Arena Chiller project. Item 9A7, an easement with the Board of County Commissioners for the Midwest Avenue reconstruction project. Item 9A8, a submission of for funding with WYDOT for the Paradise Valley Robertson Road Bridge project. Item 9A9, a purchase of municipal court software from Tyler Technologies. Item 9A10, accepting a wetlands grant from the Wyoming Governor's Big Game Coalition, Item 9A11, amending the contract with PowerPhone for emergency medical dispatch equipment. And item 9A12, a contract with the Downtown Development Authority for the management of the parking lot and garage.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins. Second by Councilman Huber. City Manager, would you like to comment on any of the items?
The only one I'd like to comment on is one that I had put together, which is item number 12, the contract for professional services with the DDA for downtown parking facilities is for a 2-month period to continue the operation as it is until we can give you an update on the RFP responses at the work session this next Tuesday evening.
Okay,
Clarify, thank you.
thank you. Any abstention or nay votes? Councilman Cathy.
Yes, I would like to vote nay on item 9A8, the Robertson Road Bridge. That is committing us to $506,000 over the next 18 months actually over the next year, even though it's from 1 cent funds. We don't know whether we're going to have those or not, and I don't think that's a place to be committing those funds at this time.
Okay. Any other abstention or nay votes? Okay, all voting aye?
Aye.
Aye. Please record the vote.
With Councilman Cathy voting nay on item 9A8, motion passed.
Okay, at this time, we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. So, Councilman Johnson. Okay, Councilman Cathy.
I was supposed to have a Hall of Justice Joint Powers Board meeting tomorrow. That has been canceled, so we're done.
All right.
That's easy.
Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I took note tonight, we got our sales tax in for the first month of FY 20 or 21, and it was a little bit positive to the tune of about $259,000, or no, I think that was the delta, change from 20 to 21, about 20% higher than we anticipated when we made the budget. So that's a big help. The dollars are actually 5% different. So we're a little bit ahead for 1 month, which I was really surprised. This is actually June dollars, as I recall, so that's a good sign, folks.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Pacheco.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Huber.
Nothing tonight.
Councilman Bates.
Just a few. One, fireworks show, if you were here and you got to see it, it was really well done. My family and everybody was pleased to watch fireworks, and I'm glad that that went off fairly well. Second, reminder to the public about fire danger and that we are at extreme high risk. So cigarette butts, please put them out in your car. Don't flick them out into the grass. People that are doing barbecue, please be extra careful and watch where your sparks or anything like that goes. I know that there was several fires around Casper, and I hope people will be more cautious about that. And huge thanks to the street outlaws for being here. I know some people have had some complaints about the revving up cars and the noise, but I'm grateful that they're here and that they're recording here in Casper. I think that's pretty awesome to have a major TV show doing it here. So that's all I have.
All right, Vice Mayor Lutz, go ahead. We'll finish this part. We skipped one section.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. And I don't have anything tonight either. However, we did skip item 14A. So please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Action item, I'm sorry, and I don't have my agenda. Thank you. This would be authorizing the use of the patio for restaurant liquor license number 44 for Occasions by Corey LLC, doing business as Occasions Entertainment Group, located at 303 South Walcott Street, and that's a minute action item, and it was on our consent agenda. My apologies for missing that on the script. So we would just need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Vice Mayor Lutz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by by Councilman Bates. Any abstention or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
All right. The next next meeting of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, July 14th, 2020, in the council chambers, in a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, July 21st, 2020, in the council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have a matter to discuss regarding litigation and personnel. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco. Second by Councilman Johnson. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into an executive session, having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Aye. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
A greater than 2/3 majority of council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.